Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar about consistent data masking across your landscape for both SAP and non-SAP. This webinar is co-hosted between EPI-USE Labs and DATPROF. My name is Magdalene Kotze and I'm part of the marketing team at EPI-USE Labs, and thank you for joining us today. Just to let you know, a recorded version of this webinar will be available and sent to all of you. The lines are muted, but you can ask your questions in the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. So it is my pleasure to introduce the presenters to you today. Paul Hammersley is the Senior Vice President of the ALM product portfolio at EPI-USE Labs. Paul's portfolio includes system landscape optimization, and his hands-on experience of implementing DataSync Manager and helping clients to manage data across the breadth of their SAP landscape is quite unique. He has a specialized knowledge about data security and how GDPR will impact customers running SAP. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. And then Michael de Boer is a partner manager at DATPROF. Michael loves manipulating data and is specialized in test data management. He brings consultants and technical software together, creating great customer solutions, and likes to share his experiences like he's going to do today. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Michael to tell us more about test data management challenges. Thanks, Michael.
Great, thank you for introducing us, Magdalene, and it's great to have this opportunity today to share our experiences. When looking at test data management, we see several typical challenges throughout the customers, and you're looking at 6 typical ones that we come across in our conversations with end customers. Most of them have a challenge when it comes to the refresh of their data sources. Now, the past few years, sources have the tendency to ongoingly increase in size, making it more difficult to make a timely copy, making it a performance challenge to copy a full source, also leading to a lower frequency of copying sources, and in the end resulting into not having the right test data available at the right time when necessary. Another challenge with having large forces is having the right data at the right time. We do see a lot of testers struggling with finding the exact data set they need, especially if they have to work with full data copies. Another challenge there is that when you have multiple teams working together on a single source, or even if you have different test scenarios on a single source, there's a strong desire to have a small portion of the data available that matches your test goal. So the top 3 ones are really focused on the size of the source and how to handle that, and it is nice to have solutions in place to be able to derive just a tiny portion of the data, just what you need it for. Looking at the bottom challenges, it's also about being compliant, about being able to follow the legislator. It could be in relationships with the General Data Protection Regulation, but it could also be an industry standard, such as in the health industry or in the financial sectors. Another typical challenge is that these landscapes tend to have a variety of different applications and a variety of different technologies to them. So being able to end-to-end come up with a test data solution, being able to consistently anonymize over a landscape is a typical challenge. And the last one, not the least one, that has to be cost effective. And cost effective also means that you would like to have a mature test data management solution in place, which is easy to implement and which is easy to maintain. Another part about being cost effective is having the availability of just the right test data at just the right time. Because if you're able to do early bug finds way before an application goes into production, you do have not only a cost advantage, but also a speed advantage. You're able to, in a rapid pace, deliver new versions of applications to production. Now, looking at the focus of the webinar today, we'll focus on being compliant and how to do this end-to-end. Because most of our customers have mixed landscapes. And if we looked at the variety of landscapes, it could be a mixture of several SAP applications. And not only SAP applications, we also come across, for instance, applications built on Oracle, such as PeopleSoft, or it could be JD Edwards, or Siebel, or any other Oracle-related solution. Of course, there's a wider spectrum of vendors out there. So the same goes for the Microsoft solutions based on SQL Server. So we see a variety of applications there where we have solutions in place. And then, of course, we have the movement to, for instance, Salesforce. So this is just an example of the different types of applications that we've come up with the solutions for in the past few years. Having said that, this used to be two separate roles. We would used to have a partner in place, such as EPI-USE, doing the SAP solutions, and our solutions standalone for the other solutions. So with the desire to have this as a mixed combination, we've been looking at how to be able to deliver this in an end-to-end way, where we would connect the SAP test data to the test data for all the other different sources. And these different sources tend to have different database technologies underneath them. So this is a selection of the natively supported database technologies where we have data masking solutions in place. So in our latest innovation, we've decided to bundle the forces of EPI-USE Labs and DATPROF. And that means that we've been able to use the best of breeds. So for the SAP landscapes, we can use EPI-USE Labs, their solution, and for the non-SAP, we have DATPROF as both market-leading companies with their technologies. The first step in this bundling of forces is to look at the most logical product to do that with, and that's being Data Sync Manager from EPI-USE, specialized in data masking, and DATPROF Privacy, the toolset from DATPROF. So that's how we come up with an end-to-end solution. And the nice part is that it's not only end-to-end on an operational basis, but it also comes with the proof of being compliant. So it also generates audit reports, so you're actually able to show the privacy legislator that you are compliant throughout your landscape. We've prepared a nice demo for you today, and we'll start with an SAP source using the Data Sync Manager to do the masking. Once that's in place, we'll consistently mask in the same way an Oracle source to show you how you can do that throughout the landscape. I think it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Hammersley, who will do the demo for the Data Sync Manager. So Paul, it's up to you.
Thank you very much, Michael. You should in a moment be able to see my screen. So we're going to start on the SAP side, and we've got a set of example customers. So we're looking at some customers in this range, and this could be data that we've loaded into a development system or a test system. It could be testing of loads that will eventually be used into the production system, or maybe testing an interface with real data. And we now want to go and mask this data in the test system, but there is a relating application that has the same information that we'll then take care of using the DATPROF solution. So I'm coming into Data Secure, which is one of the components of Data Sync Manager, and from here I can mask an entire client using the policies that we have available, or I can mask specific objects. So in this example, I don't want to affect the rest of the data in the client. I just want to come in and mask the specific objects. We then see a list of the different types of data that we have masking rules available for, and in this case I'm going to pick up the customer as my starting option. It then looks at the policies that are available to me as a user. So you can limit certain users to certain policies, you can assign them to groups. And in a moment I can choose from those policies, and I have a basic policy with some standard delivered rules. So these are rules that we provide out of the box. And when we choose that policy, we'll see the objects affected by that. So one of the interesting things about masking across different environments is that the SAP data model tends to be a lot more complex, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But we can see we've got the integration to potential other objects that we may also need to mask at the same time. Now, because we're doing an object-based mask, we can now make selections, and I have my range of customer masters. We can preview the data, but for larger amounts, we'd go straight through to the execution options. And in here, we can then use parallel processing. So in here, I can see the number of background processes available within a system, and I can assign processes to that. So in this example, I'm just going to say, let's use 4 processes, and then we can execute this. So that's now starting off a job where it will calculate new values for each of the customer masters and the related address information, and then it will actually start applying that to the data. Can I just jump back into the slides while that's working, just to explain some of the challenges here. So I mentioned the data model is much more complex inside SAP. So we need to know when we're masking a particular type of data, does this data exist in isolation? So is this just an employee master on its own? Or do we have an employee master that also links to the business partner? Or is the business partner linked to a vendor? Is the customer also linked to the business partner? We could have somebody who is both a vendor and a customer for the organization. But all of these have sitting behind it the address central management tables. So you have multiple additional tables that duplicate the same information, but sometimes store the information in a slightly different format. And this is also something that can go outside to other SAP applications. So we may be going across to a CRM system as well. So if we go and look at an example here of the actual data, you have situations where the same information is in multiple places, but sometimes is actually pushed together and concatenated into one field. So as EPI-USE Labs, we understand this data model. We've been mapping this data model for a long time, and we can actually make sure that when we start masking the data, we will have consistent values across the different fields, within the different tables, within the different objects, and across multiple objects and even SAP systems. So we do this based on content that we provide. So you have a policy, and we ship a delivered policy that you can start to use, or you can make your own policy to begin with. But each policy contains rules. So we provide over 100 delivered rules on all the different object types that people typically need to be able to mask. And each rule is then made up of what we call integrity maps, which are the map of all of these fields across the different tables, and then transformation functions. So the integrity map is basically the what, and the transformation function is the how. How will this change? So if somebody wants to actually have a slightly different way of masking the data, they can copy a delivered rule and then just change the transformation function. They might pick one of our random value generators, or they might use a constant value, or they might send the data in from somewhere else. So we can see inside these example rules, we've got these configurations. So we can see the integration integrity maps here. We can see what function is assigned, but we can also make optional rules, and we can even make conditional rules. So different things can happen to the data depending on either the user selection or the selection assigned to the policy, or we can actually have conditions to say, if it's a company, do one transformation function, if it's a person, do a different transformation function. So I'm going to go back now to our monitor desk, and if we refresh this, we can see this job has run. So it's done masking on all of those records. We had about 1,300 records in total. I can go in and see more information inside here, and we have an audit log if we choose to use one that actually tells us how the data has changed. So we can see old values and new values from within here. But if we go to our table listing, we can see the data was previously examples like Delma Fenner. If I now refresh this, we can see this is now updated. So we've got different values for these names, and this is the information that we then want to share with DATPROF. So we have a utility here that I can execute, provide the data secure masking run, and it will then pull out all of the information for the different customer keys that we've just processed, and essentially what the new values should be. We can save that file and then open it up. It looks something like this. Now you could choose to share this without the original names as well if you wanted to. So if we just want to provide new values, we also have APIs that we can use to connect this more directly if you wanted to. So this is what we would then pass across. And so I'm going to hand this over now to Michael to continue the process on the non-SAP system.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Great to see the masking in Data Sync Manager, and great that we have the option of reusing the same masking rules in the DATPROF solution. Now, what I would like to do is to give you an idea of how DATPROF works, because we have two components. We have DATPROF Privacy that we use to come up with a masking or a synthetic data template. And we have the runtime platform where we do the execution of the templates. So this is where we are able to build a full refresh of a series of different sources. This is also the place where a tester goes to request a new test data set. Now, if you look at how these two work together, then in a typical implementation, we would start with connecting DATPROF Privacy with a copy of a data source. And the first step would be to import the metadata of the source, that being the data model, the foreign keys, the primary key, basically the data model and all her relationships. In the second step, we would then come up with either a masking template or a synthetic data generator template, or the combination of the two in a single template. So we come up with masking rules or synthetic rules to be able to handle privacy-sensitive data. Once that template is in place, we then hand it over to the runtime platform that translates it into queries. And once these queries are being executed, it will deliver you two products, one being the anonymized source and the other one being the audit log and the audit report about the measurements taken on the source. So it would be nice to show you both. Let's start with DATPROF Privacy. So this is the interface of DATPROF Privacy, which we use to build templates. And what we'll do today is that we'll use a predefined template to do the masking in a consistent way. So the typical first step is to make a connection with the source. In this case, we can use this connection, then import the metadata of the source. So that would give the option to import all the different tables and the connections between them. So you would have all the relations available to put in your template. So it finds the tables and it finds the foreign keys. So we can import it. Already have imported it, so I'll skip it here for now. So you see throughout the different tool sets the synchronize metadata button, so we're able to keep templates in sync with previous versions of the template, and we also have project versioning in place within templates. So now we have the metadata, we then are able to do the development of the template itself. So looking at this Oracle data model, we have some customers in here with some privacy sensitive data, and we can then start adding functions. So if we, for instance, would look at a date of birth, you always have the option of choosing a masking function. So we could say, let's alter the date and put it in the first day of the month or the year. But you also have the option of deciding to work with synthetic data. So instead of adding a masking function, you could decide that you would generate a random date as a measure here. So you could say, let's generate a random date, or use a value from a seed list or whatever generated action you would like to do. And this choice between being able to mask or being able to use synthetic data is available throughout the privacy toolset. So, for instance, if you would look at a bank account number, you could decide to put a scramble on it, and that would give different access in the same format. But you could also decide to generate a new bank account number using one of the DATPROF generators. So for instance, you could say, let's generate a valid IBAN bank account number, and let's add a few different countries to that. For instance, one in the Netherlands. So that would also be an option. Last example here is handling names. Again, you have options here. If you look at, for instance, the typical masking solution of shuffling names, you could add a shuffle to a first name. But you could also decide to simply use fictional names and use one of the seed lists that are available in the generation part here. So, for instance, you would say that you would like to add names. In this case, it's female names. Let's select a few countries with the different names in there. And the other part is that you would say, let's just make it conditional. And in this case, we have some female names. So we would then add that it's just for the females in this set. So this is how you basically come up with the different masking rules. Well, in this case, we want to follow the solution from SAP. So what we'll do is that instead of shuffling or generating names, we're going to use the input file from DataSync Manager and use that to make a mapping from the old value to the new value. So we'll basically use this as a translation table to come up with the old name and the new name. So that's one part of this template. And the other part is that the names are combined of marriage names and maiden names. So once someone has a new name, we do want to combine the maiden name with that as well. So we've got an expression here that adds a dash and that adds the maiden name, so that it's consistent throughout the set. And the last part is that this Oracle application also contains email addresses. So we've decided to put a regular expression on this one here. And what we'll do is that we're going to take the first character of the new name, put a point in between, put the new last name there, and we've got a fictional domain name here. So we're going to rebuild an email address. And one thing we do have to bear in mind is that if we're going to do this, we do want to have the replacement of the names should have been taking place already, because otherwise we're going to take the real values of the people. So that means that this email address is dependent on the two other functions. So we have added a dependency, making sure that we'll first do the value lookup for the names. We'll then take care of the maiden name, and after that we'll start the process of creating a new fictional email address. So that's basically what's in a template, so you can have multiple things in place here. One of the things we have here as help is that we are able to visualize the entire process model we've available in this template. So besides the rules, we have the option of importing the file from SAP. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a table, load the names there from SAP, then do the process we've got in the masking template, and at the end we'll clean the table and drop it, so it's no longer available. So that's what we've done in privacy modeling with a template, and now we have the template in place. We can decide to bring it to runtime, and that's done by generating it for runtime. So we'll hit generate for runtime. That creates a runtime project, and that one is actually usable in the application. So let's move to runtime. So this is the runtime environment, and we have a series of different environments here available. So we're going to use this environment to do the consistent masking, and this is the way an environment looks like. We have here the option of upgrading the application. So if we would drag and drop this one in here, we then would have this template available in this environment. Another part about environments is that once the template is in place, it needs to be able to connect to a data source. So we've got the connection path here to the data source where we're going to execute it on, and we have the option to work with the roles based on the amount of authorities different users have. The last nice thing about environments is that we're able to place triggers on it, and that works nicely together with our API. So we can do API calls, but based on the status of our run, we can then decide to, for instance, give a signal back that a run is finalized and start another run. So that's part of the full automation of the solution. So it's time to do the execution. And before we're gonna actually start the execution, we can show you what the status of the different data sets is like at this time. Because we have the same Mr. Delmer Venner here present in the data set. And I'll give you a before and an after view. So we've got two screens here, and what we're going to do is that we're going to execute a template on this set, and I'll hit the refresh later on, so you can actually see the difference between it before and after. So let's see what happens with Mr. Delmer Venner. So I'll hit start here in the runtime environment. Gives me one scenario, being the scenario to execute a template. And right now you see the run starting up. And the nice thing is that you have the option of diving in the run and start monitoring it. So here we see the different parts of the templates being executed. So it's taking care of importing the file from the data sync manager. It's then doing the masking, and then it's cleaning it up and creating an audit report as well for us. The luxury of being able to carefully monitor the process is also that we have got nice error handling capabilities in place. So you're going to have the option of carefully monitoring a template and seeing how it's being executed. So now the run is at its end. So it's right now busy doing its final steps and generating the audit report. And once it's done, we can actually look at the data set and see how it's been changed. And it's doing its final modules, restoring the indexes, resulting in a data set that actually works. And here we've got the generation of the audit report. And the run has finished successfully, has provided an audit report. So let's see what the audit report contains. So it's somewhere downloaded but not visible at this time. So you'll have to bear with me that it's, let's see if we can open it in a new fencer. Okay. So we then would go to the run history. So this is the run we've just seen in the execution. So this is the audit report, and there we have the audit report nicely being available. So we've seen the value lookup being executed, the part of the maiden name and the rebuild of the email address, and a series of scripts has been executed. So this is the proof you can use for the legislators. Well, let's have a look at the data set itself and see how it changed. So this is the state it used to be in here, Mr. Delmer Venner being on the first row ID. I'll hit a refresh on this part, so we can actually see how row ID 93601 has changed. And it should be consistent in the masking of SAP. So it's bringing it up. And Mr. Venner has changed into Duncan van den Berg. It's been a rebuild of a new email address with his new name, davevandenberg@maas.com. In a consistent way, we've seen it in the SAP environment. So, looking at what we've seen in the past few minutes, we've been able to demonstrate consistent masking in an SAP source and a non-SAP source. That has come with an audit report to prove the compliancy and the measurements taken on a source. And what's really nice about it, we've been using our out-of-the-box standard solutions. So we've come up with a handy innovation to combine the two, but it's based on the standard we have today. So it's actually available today. Paul, if you have anything to add to the conclusions, you're most welcome.
No, I think it was a very good demonstration there, Michael. The only thing I would add is just that we specifically chose to mask in SAP and then distribute out. We could have gone the other way around as well. So there's lots of flexibility in how you can actually link the solutions across your environments.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually great that you're able to have either SAP sources leading or a non-SAP source as the leading source, and make it consistent. I think that brings us to Magdalene for the Q&As.
Thanks, Michael and Paul. This is great. I see there's a couple of questions. We might run over a little, so let's see how many questions we can address. But you are welcome to put your questions in the box. If we don't get to them, we will make sure that we get you the answers after the webinar is closed. So just the first one, I think, is for you, Paul. Does this also apply to an SAP S4 Cloud Essentials multi-tenant cloud environment?
I was actually just typing an answer to that, so I shall save my typing and explain it. Sadly, we can't install third-party add-ons in the cloud S4 version, so you also can't create your own custom tables and custom code because it's a multi-tenanted environment and they want to make sure that everybody is just working from the pure vanilla version of S4 there. But we do have customers running the HANA Enterprise Cloud that have installed our solutions there, so we can there. So basically any version of SAP where you're able to add Z code or Z tables, we can install our add-on that's in our own namespace provided by SAP.
Great. Then another one, do we need to map masking rules for all sensitive columns of child tables as well, though it can be done at the parent table level? I think this is for DATPROF, or am I wrong?
I think it probably applies to both. So I'll quickly answer on the SAP side and then hand over to Michael. So inside our integrity maps, we link the related tables. So the places where the data will also definitely be the same value is actually built in as part of the integrity map. But in the rules, you can then apply multiple integrity maps. So you can see where there may be related table fields and set how you want those to be handled. There's also data discovery, so we provide a lot of delivered content, literally I think into the thousands of integrity maps, but we also do discovery where it can go and look to see, is there a custom field on a standard table that also stores these values, and it actually looks for the exact data, and you can give it a tolerance match that you want to see, so that it can basically show you're also repeating customer first name or employee address in a particular field. Then it's very easy to just link that to the delivered content, and then it will be processed at the same time.
Yeah, if you look at the DATPROF solution, I think Bert is best in place to provide the answer of how we handle the parent and child relations.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, masking databases within the privacy solution would require to actually map multiple functions on different tables to make it consistent. We have tooling called DATPROF Analyze, which is a data discovery solution that can analyze different data in different tables and different databases to make it more easier to map those functions on top of multiple tables.
Thank you. So I think that's all the time we have for questions, or for all the other questions that's popped up. We will make sure that we give you the answers that you need. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future. Please reach out to us. Have a great afternoon.